Hey guys, welcome. This is the Afro Puff Girls podcast, where three urban naturalista blurs discuss, dissect, and fangirl over TV shows and movies, as well as books, music, and video games. I'm Jessica. Sorry for this shaky intro.
I am Carolyn from Manhattan. Welcome.
Hi, and I'm Fancy Ams from the Bronx.
How's everybody's week going? I have to send a birthday shout out to Jess. Just celebrated a birthday yesterday.
Thank you.
Birthday to
I turned 70.
Dirty 30. No, this week has been dragging. I'm over it. Been over it. It's hot as hell. It feels like an oven. I feel like people are smothering me and breathing on me.
It's exceptionally muggy and hot.
You can eat the air.
Yeah.
Yum, yum. It don't taste good. It don't taste good.
No.
Not this New York air. No.
It don't taste no good.
Okay, so today for episode 2, we are going to do a dark deep dive.
Season 2.
For season 2. So I'll kick it off. I'll give you a brief, try to make it brief, little synopsis about the first half of the season, partly because I only got up to about episode 3. And there's a lot that goes on that I just want to listen just like you guys are. So in true dark fashion, season 2 begins in the future. So it starts 6 months after season 1. We're in, excuse me. Hold on one. We start in June 1921. We see two guys in a cave. They're having a conversation about, faith and belief, and there's an older guy and a younger guy. The older guy, he kind of looks like Bartos.
It looks a lot like Bartos.
Mm-hmm. And he's kind of upset that the younger guy that he's speaking to doesn't have faith in this particular gentleman that they're calling Adam. Young guy gets a little mad, and he gets the pickaxe to this guy. We find out that this younger guy is actually Noah. And this is my own personal belief. I feel like this is pretty much where the Noah character pretty much picks up his flag. This is where he begins his time traveling quest, I believe. Mm. So after that scene, we go to Jonah. Teen Jonah. He's visiting the grave of his dad, and we realize that this scene actually happens right after the apocalypse. The apocalypse takes place, I believe, in 2053.
Well, no, the apocalypse takes place, and it happened in June 27th, 2020.
Correct.
But we're in the post-apocalyptic era of 2053.
So once Jonas is at the gravesite, he also sees his dad's and his friend's gravesite. And when you look at the dates, you realize that all of his friends died a year and a day after his father killed himself. Mm-hmm. So now we move over to there's a scene where the head of the plant is letting everyone know in 2019 that the plant, 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
That the plant is going to shut down in 6 days, which is coincidentally the day of the apocalypse.
Boom.
So literally. So what else? So we get to another scene where we see Jonah's mother in a very desperate state. She has a gun in her hand, and as she is about to let off, door opens, and it's actually future Jonas. She's kind of confused as to what she's seeing and who she's looking at, so he reassures her just by, he gives her a few things that happened in his past. He shows her some scars and some things in the house that just reassures her that this is actually her son and he is from the future. She doesn't question it. She continues on.
I know everyone is like, oh, like the dog. Oh,
Yeah, like people are just coming from the future and the past, and everything is, no one's questioning anything at this point. They're just accepting it and moving along.
Well, Wyndon is weird, so I would have been like, you know what? We ain't got nothing else going on. Why not?
Let's ask some questions. There's only like 400 of us in this town. We might as well.
Yeah.
So we see that Martha finds a bunch of maps, some pages with some symbols on it. Elizabeth, let me not jump too far.
Well, Elizabeth, that's not jumping far. Where are we?
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. Right after that scene, Elizabeth is having a conversation with her father about her mother's parents. And after that conversation, she does a little digging and she finds in the time travel book from H.G. Teneman, she finds a very old picture. And in that very old picture is a picture of Noah in there. And he looks exactly as he did when he met Elizabeth. Elizabeth shows her father the picture. He is very concerned, and the first chance he gets, he shows the picture to his wife. She has no idea how this guy is in this picture, who he is, what relation she has to him. It's one big mystery. Mm-hmm. We also find out that Waller is related to
Benny?
Yes. We don't know how. It's just kind of inferred that they have a brother relationship.
Yeah.
Not explained at all. What else? Future Noah also begins working on his time machine. While he's working on his time machine, he's listening to audio from the day after the apocalypse, and he happens upon a tape with Claudia where she mentions this good particle. Magnus and Francisca, they've hooked up, but he's still a little suspicious about what she's doing, so he kind of follows her around.
Insecure.
Mm-hmm. Katerina, with 2 children missing, she is a little unhinged, and you see her searching in the caves. Elizabeth, in the future, when 2019 Jonas is doing his time traveling, one of the places he visits is the post-apocalyptic country. And he sees that it's being run by Elizabeth, basically. Mm-hmm. She's leading the post-apocalyptic world. I always just get so tongue-tied with that. She's mad at Jonas because she wants Jonas to fix the portal, and he has other plans. He wants to fix the time-traveling machine so that he can go back to the past and try and stop whatever is going on. That is the end of episode 1, beginning and endings.
And real quick with that one, too, yeah. It's interesting, not realizing it at the time, but he was listening to tapes by Claudia. And what we know is, why did Claudia have tapes and saying that she was, a survivor of the apocalypse and this was clearly, a young Claudia, not, the old Claudia. And she said she was the survivor. Right. So it leaves, a lot open.
Yeah, that was one of my... Yeah. So, episode 2, Dark Matter, it begins with this blob that is called a dark matter. Charlotte referred to it as the good particle.
The God particle.
The God particle, excuse me. Oh, good Lord.
Well, God is good.
God is good, God is great.
Yeah.
We see Regina being interviewed by a Charlotte and who else? We see her being interviewed, and they're asking her why.
Wait, who are you saying?
Clausen, yes. Yeah. Claudia and Clausen are interviewing Regina, and they're asking her questions such as, why did her husband take her name rather. She mentions future Jonas staying at the hotel. She shows Charlotte some of the things that he left in the hotel room. One of those things that she recognizes is pages that were missing from her grandfather's book. So with that, she understands that time travel is real. We also see that future Jonas takes his mom back to 1986 to prove what happened to Mikkel. She doesn't take that too well. Claudia also goes back to 1987 to explain time travel to herself.
That was so trippy.
Yeah, that was a great episode. That's definitely something you definitely want to watch in episode 2. This is a really interesting scene. yeah, she's talking to herself, and she explains that she has to stop, that she basically is the one who has to stop all of the craziness that's going on. Now, then we go to 2053, and Jonas is stealing gas to fuel his time travel. He's caught. He's sentenced to die. However, Elizabeth gets a little mercy, and she shoots him in the leg instead of letting him hang to his death. Then we go to 1987, where Egon is speaking to Helge about Mad's disappearance. Something that Helge says reminds Egon of... Helge says something that reminds Egon of his own kidnapping case. So Egon gets curious about Ulrich and finds out that he is still alive and in a psych ward. So Egon goes to visit him. He does remember, Ulrich does remember Egon, and he repeats some song lyrics that he said to Egon 33 years before he got arrested. Back in 1987, Mikkel goes home to Inez, and he asks her about God. So Inez tells Mikkel that God does have a plan for him, and it's for Inez to be there for Mikkel, which seemed to suffice his questions. Mm-hmm. Jumps back to 2053, and we see that Elizabeth is visiting Jonas in a prison cell. She asks who he is and why he was allowed to live. Elizabeth eventually frees him and asks him to show her what's in that dead zone.
Wait, no, that's not Elizabeth. That's some young girl.
That's Elizabeth's translator.
Her translator, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who has no name at the moment.
No. Yeah, just girl with the scar.
I just call her the translator in my notes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So then they hop back to 1987, and we see that Hannah sees Mikkel in his new life as Michael, living with Inez, and she finally gets the picture of how everything comes to be. Younger Claudia finds the time machine in the exact spot where the future Claudia had buried it for her to find. Then they, last scene, jump back or forward to 2053. They're in the dead zone, and Jonas is showing the translator the God particle. Mm-hmm. The stolen gas stabilizes it. He steps into the portal, and then it just goes back into unstable form again. So one of the things we're left with season 2 is what happens to Jonas. Mm-hmm. So quickly, season 3 starts with 86.
Episode 3.
Yeah, episode 3, title Ghost. We start with young Helge in 1986. He's in that scary room, strapped in a chair by Noah. Mm-hmm. He gets a little pep talk, and he seems kind of confused and like proud at the same time. And there's a phrase that they both say, Noah says, and Helge repeats it, tick-tock. Mm-hmm. So then they jump back to 1954, where Claudia's mother and Agnes, who's Ulrich's grandmother, are having sex. Mm. Claudia sees that they're doing something intimate when she's on her way back to get some, I think, milk money. And Agnes gives her money for fruit drops as a little...
Hush money.
Hush money, there we go. And it works. She's quiet. So now we jump to June 23rd in the present time. And young Helge is returning home. He's physically scarred. His mom is happy to see him. She starts praying, holding him, the whole reunion. Young Claudia and Trante, they walk in the woods and they're talking about family. We're not 1987 we jump to, and Claudia is reconnecting with Regina after she heard that the apocalypse is soon on their tails. Regina isn't used to getting any type of attention or being spoken to, so she doesn't want to believe it. She
was like, what is happening?
Yeah, she's totally, she's not having it one bit. Something is said to Claudia that kind of jogs her memory, and it reminds her of that H.G. Tannhaus book that she's in possession of. So then we jump to 1954, jump back to 1954, and Egon is there speaking to Helge to try and figure out what happened. But Helge is at the point where he's not speaking to anyone. He's not letting anyone know what's going on. So When we jump back into present time, we see Claudia visiting Helge, wanting to know what was the reason for him giving her that book. And he just basically told her that he thought that she was the only one that could understand who he was. And he says something to the effect of time is always with you wherever you go. So then one of the last scenes, they're in 1950. Agnes is in Helge's time travel shed. He's there to go and visit old Claudia, time travel Claudia, I believe. Mm-hmm. Claudia warns him that Noah is back, and it's kind of revealed that Agnes is Noah's brother. They're not really sure if they're both born at the same time or from different times, but Agnes renounces his brother, and he renounces Noah. He tells Claudia that they're going to start a new cycle in 4 days. So that's pretty much the amount of time that they have until whatever happens is going to happen. But Claudia gives him a newspaper clipping, and he's a little confused. Leave that at that. 1987 we jump to again, and then we see Claudia visiting H.G. China House. He recognizes her, but she doesn't recognize who he is. So he tells her she's a fraud, and he explains something called a bootstrap paradox. And that's basically when something comes from the future has no real origin. So since Helge's return in 1954, Egon has doubts that Ulrich is the kidnapper, pretty much since he was locked up the whole time. He visits Ulrich in prison, but Ulrich is so out of it he can't hold a conversation or tell him anything.
Poor Ulrich.
So we go back to present time where Egon is visiting Ulrich again, asking him how he knew certain things like songs and when people passed. And Ulrich explains to Egon that he comes from the future. Egon recalls that Mikkel said Ulrich was his father, and he goes to visit Inez. Inez gives Egon a photo of Mikkel, and Egon notices that Inez is giving her son sleeping pills. Then 1954, we're at now. Helge's mom calls Noah because she's concerned that he's not speaking. So when Helge sees Noah, he embraces him, and he reads when he's prompted to. So he can speak. He just chooses who he wants to speak to.
Right. Not his bitch of a mother.
She's cold. It's ice cold.
Mm-hmm. So Noah goes back to the church, and he finds Agnes there, and he asks her what she's doing there, and she, she's telling him that Adam will never take her back. She knows where the final pages of that all-important notebook is, and Agnes gives her a newspaper clipping, and he tells her that he wants to come back before the new repeating cycle begins. In essence, sacrificing her. She says consider it a peace offering, though she doesn't see it as a sacrifice. To wrap it up, they're in the 80s. And Egon shows up at Claudia's office to tell her about his cancer and that it's spreading. She's a little pissed that, he came to her place of work, but they end up embracing each other. So then Egon goes to visit Ulrich in the psych ward again. He tells him about the young boy in 86 who disappeared, Mikkel, and shows him the photo that he received from Inez. As soon as Ulrich sees this picture, he gets upset. He wants to see Mikkel, and that just sets off uneasiness with everyone else around them. After Claudia meets Mr. H.G. Tannhaus, she's walking in the woods and confronted by Noah. He tells her that she was betrayed and she's going to die. So now she wonders if Noah and his gun are pawns and are just pawns in a game that he still doesn't know how to play. She doesn't really know what his end game is and how serious he is about everything he's telling her. He goes on to tell her that Adam is selling her an illusion, and if she was free, she'd have a choice. He kills her anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that wraps up the most important parts of episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Now here is everything that I don't know about, so let's get into 4 and on.
All right, people, stay with me here, okay?
I know it gets a lot. It gets
a lot.
It's a lot, and if I get quiet, it's because I'm taking a sip of water, okay? All right. So Jonas actually gets the dark matter working, and he time travels to 1921. But he leaves the translator. I'll use your name for her. He leaves the translator there in 2054, and she is caught by Apocalypse Elizabeth. They exchange words, and Elizabeth knew that the dark matter was there, but she's saying that everybody thinks that the dark matter is part of God, but it's actually a part of the devil. So that's the last we see of them for a while. So let me just start with the kids. The kids, Martha, Magnus, Francisca, and Elizabeth, decide that since the adults want to act like kids and don't want to speak and tell them anything, let's just say that Charlotte and Peter have not been home in I don't know how long. So they decide they're going to go to the cave and see what's up. They go to the cave and they meet Bartosz. Bartosz is coming back from time traveling. So they beat him up, tie him, and leave him in the cave overnight because he doesn't want to say what he knows. Sadly. Poor Bartosz.
I know.
It's just, if you don't want to speak, we're going to get you to talk. So now we're going to go to the adults. We have old Jonas, which is adult Jonas, I guess. Adult Jonas has been staying with Hannah. And after everything that she's seen, Hannah decides that they need to tell somebody. So they call Charlotte over, and she explains to Charlotte that this is Jonas, and he's time travel. And since Charlotte already has been working with Peter from everything that Claudia has told them, she catches on really quick, and she takes them to the bunker where they have everything posted on the wall, the pictures and everything. And Hannah decides, they all decide that it's time to tell Katharina, since they have all this evidence, they have picture evidence of Ulrich in 1953. They don't have evidence of Mikkel yet, but they know that he's somewhere. Well, they know that he is in the 80s. Right. So she comes in, and she's looking at all of them. They explain it to her, and she's like, "You guys are freaking crazy." So, especially when adult Jonas is like, "I'm Hannah's son and your grandson." She's like, "Bitch, please." So she leaves.
She did that like manic laugh too. That was
hilarious. She was like, "What? Can you speak to ghosts?" And I'm just like, "Oh, she about to beat all of y'all." She's just that type of person. Like, I will fuck everybody up. Yeah. So she leaves. She's actually the principal of the school, so she knows that she can get proof. So she goes to the school and looks at the records, and there's Michael Cornwall. And there's actually a class picture, and she breaks down because she sees her son there. And poor girl, that's the NBC of her in that episode. So now we're going to go to Jonas. Jonas has traveled farther back than he thought he would. He's in 1921, like I said before. And they find him bleeding because he was actually hanged. So he has a mark on his neck. And they take him to a woman named Erna. She supposedly takes in all strays, and that's human strays, not cats and dogs. So she takes in all strays. She feeds him. They look at his wounds, and they let him go to sleep. And we actually see a young Agnes. She's about 12.
Yeah, like she's pretty young.
Yeah, she's young, but she's quiet. She doesn't say anything, but they call her Agnes. He sleeps, and then he wakes up, and he sees a young man in his room, and it's actually young Noah. Young Noah has like this I'm the shit type of stuff, and
he's
just
very
like
arrogant.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I thought you'd be different." Like what? Why'd you say that? So
like, who are you?
Yeah. So he's just like, all right. He's like, okay, whatever. So Jonas is in this room, and he sees the Sigmundus Creatus' picture. So he knows that wherever he is, these people are a part of it.
Right.
So he knows that he's not. He asks him what year he's in, and he's freaking out. So he goes to the cave, and he realizes that the cave has not been dug out yet. So he feels like he's stuck. He's like, okay, I'm stuck. There's no other way around it. So young Noah actually follows him. He's like, oh, it's not done yet. He's like, come on, Sigmundus is waiting for you. So he's like, who's Sigmundus? He tells him that they're also known as the Travelers. So they go back, and it's like this really like it's like you look at a shack, and then they take this freaking elevator, and there's like a castle on the ground, and he meets older Noah again. I think he met him already, and it's young Noah and old Noah, I guess I would call him, and they're both talking to Jonas, and they say, "Okay, come on, we're gonna go meet who you have to meet." Take him to this room, and he meets Adam. He's talking to him, and Adam is, I could describe him like he's scarred up. He has scars all over his face.
Yeah.
And he tells him, traveling leaves his mark. So, you get all this radiation that you're going through, and it takes a toll on your body.
Okay.
So Jonas is looking at him after a while, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he has this collar. Adam has his collar, and he takes it off and shows a mark on his neck. So Adam is Jonas.
Girl.
Oh,
Boom.
Wow.
And that is the end of that episode.
And a quick thing, too, that's when it occurred to me that the person who's been narrating the series was Adam the whole time.
Yeah.
So Adam, who is Jonas, is also the one who's narrating.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
So I don't know if I mentioned that, but that was episode 4, and it's called The Travelers. Episode 5, Lost and Found.
Wait, sorry, just to cut you off. I'm kind of blown
I
because
know.
in episode they showed the disfigured man towards the end of episode 1,
Right.
and they mentioned his name, but they didn't give you any other context clues to who he was.
Just seemed like a new character,
right? Who was just trying to pump Noah up to continue doing whatever it is that he's doing. So yeah, that just
yeah.
Okay. Joe is all over the place. I mean, Jonas is all over the place.
He's traveling, and he's like what's his name? Hayden Christensen movie, that god awful film Jumper.
Oh, I loved it when it came out.
Okay, so episode 5, Lost and Found. We're gonna start with the kids. The kids, and I'm talking about Magnus, Martha, Francesca, and Elizabeth, go back to the cave to interrogate Bartos some more. I'm blown away that they actually left him there overnight.
That's crazy.
And I have a quick side note. Katerina found this picture, and she tries to talk to her kids finally. I mean, it's a lot, but she tries to talk to them, and Martha's like, "No, bitch. You had your time. I don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you found, I don't care," and just leaves her. And it's just like, well, if you would have talked to her, she would have showed you that. Now they go back. Bartos finally tells them it's a time machine because they're threatened to leave him there overnight again.
Assholes.
So Francisco was like, the human body could last without food and water for 3 days. Try me. And they was about to leave him. And he was like, "Nah, okay, I'm about to be on myself." So he took them back. He took them to the 80s. And when you get out the cave, it's like the only difference is there's no couch, because in the 2020s, there's a couch. There's like a chair there. And they're like, "Okay, there's no chair, but big whoop." So they're like, "You know what? You're lying. I'm going to go home." So they walk, and they notice that there's a bus stop. At the bus stop has like 80s stuff on it. Like really, the 80s is like big hair. And they're like, "Okay, this shit is weird." So meanwhile, I'm just going to cut that off. Meanwhile, the adults, we have old Jonas. Old Jonas, he left the house. He left Hannah sleeping. And what I didn't mention in episode 4, Katerina outs Hannah for sleeping with Ulrich. So he's pissed. Jonas is pissed. He's like, you are not who I thought you were. So he leaves the house with the time machine, and he goes to talk to Charlotte. And Charlotte, at this point, I didn't realize that they don't know what Jonas knows. So Jonas only knows what they know. So Charlotte asks him, like, "Do you know who's Noah?" And he explains that Noah is the one that was killing kids. And, he's Adam's puppet.
Don't you love how they say Noah when it's in the German language? Noah.
No.
Like,
It's
so ominous. Like,
I mean, he's doing
I know
a lot
he
of
is
shit.
pretty ominous.
So
person.
Yeah.
So he and I question him here, but let me finish what he says. He says, Charlotte wants to know about her parents, and he says he doesn't know. And he also says that Claudia, the woman, they have a picture of older Claudia, which is like she has white hair, and she looks like a witch a little bit. I'm not gonna front. She says Claudia used everyone that she's talking about Tannhaus. She's talking about him. She says, and the others. I'm not sure who the others are.
Okay.
But he says that she used everybody. And that's why I'm just like, I feel like Jonas isn't saying something. Because everything that he's told him so far, we've seen with young Jonas. So I'm like, you're like 33 years older. You must have seen a lot.
A little bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You must have seen a lot. So I feel like he knows that Noah is her dad.
Wait, what?
He feels
that one. I kind of heard that. I'll just wait.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
What?
It's coming up real soon.
So, I think go.
Yeah, let me just continue. And he's being creepy. He's like sneaking into Martha's room and just like looking around. And I'm just like, dude, that's your aunt. Just get out of here.
Right.
So Clausen is going around questioning everyone. He questions Hannah about Alexander, and he's just being like a nosy body. And I feel like he knows a lot. And it's like, who's telling you all this stuff? And I realized Waller got a big mouth, so whatever. So Katerina believes in the time travel. Now she goes to find Jonas. And Jonas is not at the house. So she confronts Hannah, and she's like, I can't believe you slept with both my son and my husband. He's like, you're like a parasite.
Yeah, like...
And...
Thirsty how?
Thirsty. Thirsty. So... we have Claudia. And this is 1987 Claudia. Since our older Claudia is no longer with us. So Claudia questions Bern Doppler about the dark matter because, he showed her the nuclear waste, but he didn't tell her, like, because there was an incident. I don't remember what the incident was. There was an incident that happened, and I guess he decided to hide all of that. And
was it the dark matter, actually? Because the God particle? Because that was supposed to be kept a secret.
I think that's where that came from. So she's questioning him, and she's basically saying that we should tell everybody about this. It's amazing.
Like, hell no.
And he's like, no, because everybody's gonna know that it came from the plant, and people are not gonna want to deal with that. So he's like, whatever you do, if you decide to tell people, just keep my name out of it, and because the nuclear plant is his legacy,
right?
Which is crazy because his name is basically taken off of the nuclear plant. You don't, when you think of the nuclear plant, you think Tiedemann.
Yeah, you don't think of Doppler.
Right.
So, she's like, okay, she's still doing research on that. She gets that tested secretly. So in the midst of doing that, she goes to see Egon, and she's basically trying to prevent his death.
Okay.
So there's that. Old Ulrich, after finding out that Mikkel is in the 80s with him, he decides to break out. So he steals a key, and he finds his way to the nurse's house, Nurse Inez. And he sees Mikkel sitting out in the back. And Mikkel's like, he's a nice young man, gets him something to drink. He's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Whatever. And they're sitting, and he's, Mikkel is staring at him. And he's like, you look familiar somehow. And Ulrich is like shook.
That's crazy.
And he's like, oh, the last thing he said, well, not the last thing he said to him, I think, was he showed him a trick. He's like, it's not about how, it's about when. And he repeats that to Mikkel, and Mikkel is just like, wow, like, yeah, I remember. And he knows that's his dad. He calls him Papa. Which it's crazy.
That is awesome because that's the same thing that happened in season 1. Like the last interaction that father and son had, the son was showing his dad a trick, and that's exactly what he said to him.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, and so Egon. So sorry, Ulrich is like, I got to get you out of here. So they're running, and this poor old man cannot run. So but they almost made it. They tried to run to the cave, and Egon hears that Nurse Inez runs home because she heard that he broke out. So she runs home because she's afraid that, I don't know what she thought. She probably thought that he was going to get attacked or whatever. Yeah. Because they just said escape murderer.
Because you know what it is? I think she remembered him too she did remember him from 1953. From the papers and the interaction at the clock shop.
Yeah, no, but yeah.
Right.
Yes, I feel like, she just...
Oh, she was there?
Yeah.
Oh.
He said, "Mama."
Oh, right.
To
When
young
it was
Jana.
one of those two or three
Yeah.
girls. Yeah. Okay. So they try to run to the cave, but Egon remembers that he tried to run there as well in 1953. So he's like, "Oh, I think I know where they're going," and they intercept them. And I think Mikkel is shook, so he doesn't say anything, and he lets Nurse Inez take him home, and they take Ulrich back to the hospital. But on the way, Ulrich spots his other kids, Magnus, Martha, and they're at the bus stop, and they're looking
so
around.
bad for him.
And they're looking around, and the car that he's in is like an old car.
Yeah.
That they don't see in the
and they obviously don't recognize him.
Yeah, right. And so he's just like, my kids, those are my kids, and
it's
they're like,
sad because he just
crazy.
sounds like fucking like a lunatic. It's really sad. That was real sad.
So he's just like, my kids. So they take him back and they drug him, they strap him up, and poor thing.
Yeah.
So now we have Jonas and Adam. So I think Adam revealing that he was Jonas. Jonas passed out.
He did.
He was.
That would have made me pass out too if I saw that face.
He woke up in bed, and it's just like, well, I get it. So, so they have a conversation, and Jonas is like, I have to, Jonas is the first thing he's saying is, I have to get back to my time. It's about to, people are about to die. I want to stop it. So he tells him to get dressed. So he gives him the same clothes. He gives him the raincoat. He gives him because he didn't have that on before, right, in the Apocalypse War. So they actually have all that stuff ready for him. So before he sends him where he has to send him, he tells him that Sigmundists have created a new world without time. They say God equals time, and they've declared war on time.
Oh,
so fucking cold.
It's a cult.
I mean, that's what it is.
Sounds so crazy.
He says that there are moments that you never forget. Everything is linear, and everything that's happening to them is like a knot in time. So that's why it's looped. So he remembers sitting where young Jonas is sitting, having the same conversation, thinking that he would never say the things that he's saying to himself.
Right.
So he's like, but there's a loophole. He says, if he wants to break that 33-year cycle where everything goes back and basically everything happens, then he can go back, Jonas can go back, and stop his father from killing himself. So Jonas is like, okay, but if I stop it, we're going to die.
Right.
Yeah, like, how is that? And he's suspicious, and I'm just like, everything he's just told you is the opposite of what he doesn't want to stop it. He doesn't want to stop time. Like, he wants time to disappear. He doesn't want to change everything. He doesn't want to kill himself. So I would question it. Like, everything you told me, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's not adding up. So I don't know. Jonas is like, okay.
Yeah. So he's just following blindly, like, this just sounds like it's
Here's
so
your
make sense.
Let's get to time traveling.
Yeah. So I'm just like, okay, weirdos, you need to just think about it. But at the same time, it's like, whatever I gotta do.
Right.
So he sends him back. He sends him back to the day before his father kills himself, which is June 20th, 2019. And while he's sending him back, he just looks weird. I'm like, can't be trusted.
Don't trust yourself, Jonas.
Now, I am on Charlotte.
Okay.
This is the last thing that happens for me in this episode. Charlotte goes to her grandfather's watch shop. I'm not sure what she's looking for, but Noah comes in and introduces himself. She's visibly shaken. She was told by Jonas that he's the one that's been killing kids. So he's just like, I don't know, I can't change what you've heard about me, but I wanted you to know that I wanted to stop everything that was happening. I wanted to stop it, and I wanted to Sorry.
Yes.
She said, yeah. So Charlotte won't be taken away from him again. He wanted to stop everything, so she won't be taken away, and her mother won't be taken away from him.
Okay.
So he shows her a picture of himself and the baby, and says that her mother took the photo of them. So he's saying that he tells her a little story. He's like, "Oh, you know, they said you wouldn't live long because you were a premature baby, but you were strong." You know that story, and then you're like, "Oh, you grabbed onto my finger and you wouldn't let go." Yeah, and she's just like,
she starts
like
kind of like quietly spazzing.
Yeah, right, because how does he know that?
No, yeah, because like, so it's revealed like that's her dad. Noah's her father.
So Noah is Charlotte's father.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay,
Noah
so time travel runs in the family.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah. So he said he'd promised her mother that he would get her back. And she asks, who's my mother? And he's like, he doesn't say who she is. He just says, that she loved you very much and she still loves you. So,
So that means she's still alive.
She's still alive.
Oh,
I know.
So which one of these ladies? Okay, let's find out.
Yeah, you gonna find out.
So we're on to episode 6, An Endless Cycle. So we travel back to June 20th, 2019, the day before Michael kills himself. I'm just going to mention Alexander reads a paper about a 33-year-old murder in Marburg that's unsolved, but they're still on the hunt for 2 fugitives. So if we recall meeting Alexander, he had a mask on, a gun, hiding shit, just shit sneaky. Mm-hmm. So, we know he was a part of that. But it says 2 fugitives, which, when Clausen comes to question him, it's interesting. Oh, that's the next episode. My bad. We also see Ulrich. So when I'm mentioning these characters, I just want you to remember that the time travel has not occurred yet on their end. Like Jonas, I'm gonna have BD, which is before death, and that's before Michael's death, Jonas. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have an AD, which is after death, Jonas. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's how I'll differentiate them.
Okay.
All right. So we have Ulrich, and he's trying to sleep with Katerina, and she's just like, "Oh, no, I didn't shave. I'm about to have my period. Get on."
Typical excuse.
Yeah. And he's just like, I don't care about that. I mean, you've been married for like 25 years. They actually are having a party for that, an anniversary party. He don't care. He been there. He been through all of it. He watched you birth 3 babies, girl. Better open them legs.
Oh my God. I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Right to the point.
She's just acting like, I don't mean it like forcefully.
No, I don't.
Okay. But it's like he don't care about none of the excuses you're giving.
Right.
So but so you can see that he's sexually frustrated because it's like, damn, like I want some.
Right.
Mikkel actually comes in without knocking, and he has rubella, which is like it looks like chicken. It doesn't.
What's
really
crazy
look like
is that
pox.
rubella is very rare.
Very
so
rare.
I don't even know. Maybe in Europe it's not rare. I don't know because that's like not, and I don't think that's really curable. So I was like, oh my God.
I haven't heard of
I didn't
anyone
look it
having
up.
that.
And how she was like, oh, you got rubella.
Yeah, she's like, ugh.
That's like, oh, you got the measles.
Yeah, exactly. Just go lay down. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
So they decide that they're gonna take him to the hospital. So it's Ulrich, Katerina, and him go to the doctor. On the way they see Jonas, but it's after death Jonas, AD Jonas. They offer him a ride to the lake, which he refuses, and basically they make fun of the fact that everybody knows Martha has a crush on Jonas. It's like, oh, you're gonna see your girlfriend or whatever, and he's just like, this is after the Jonas, and he's changed so much from BD Jonas,
Right.
because he's just so before Jonas was just so like twitchy and he didn't know anything, and this Jonas is just like.
He's on a mission.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's just like, no, I gotta go. So they also travel to the Cornwalls to pick up things for the party. I'm sorry, I'm just checking if I missed something. Yeah. They travel to the Cornwalls to see if they... My bad, gal. They got to pick up champagne, I think, for the party. And Hannah sees Mikkel, because Mikkel's with them, and she just starts staring at him. So she gets like deja vu.
Yeah, she looked like she froze.
Yeah, she's just staring at him, and Mikkel has to use the bathroom, and they're like, "Can you use your bathroom?" And she's just zoned out. They were like, "Okay, then I guess you gotta go in the woods." And she's like,
"That was funny."
And they were like, "Okay, no." She snapped out of it. She's like, "Oh, I had deja vu," and deja vu is something that is said a lot.
It's said a lot
throughout this series.
Yes.
So she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I just had deja vu." So he goes into the house, and he goes in slow because it's kind of I would be slow too because it's a strange house. So Michael is actually still alive here. I didn't mention it, but Michael is very playful with Jonas. He sees Jonas, and Jonas doesn't hear him come down before he leaves the house, and so he goes up to behind him and he goes, "Boo." And you see that he's very playful and he's happy, and he doesn't get strange until they mention Ulrich and Katerina. So he's like actually shakes, physically shakes.
Yeah.
And when he sees Jonas with that yellow raincoat, he freaks the fuck out.
Yeah,
like, he's like, "Oh, just had deja vu."
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, deja vu, this fucking deja vu. So Michael, he hears Ulrich and Katerina outside, and he's looking out the window and he sees them and he's having a panic attack. So he sees Mikkel go inside, and Mikkel's in the bathroom, and he sneaks downstairs and he's hiding up against the wall, and Mikkel comes out and turns around and sees this freaking weird man freaking out. And he runs out the house. I mean, like, okay, normal reaction.
That is
and
normal.
It's a normal reaction on Michael's part because he knows that's himself, and it's just
right. That's very creepy.
Yeah, he tried, and I know for the years that he's been there, he tried to put it behind him, but it's still like, that's me, that's my family,
right?
So we're gonna skip to Martha, Magnus, Jonas, and Bartos, and this is BD Jonas. They're going to the lake, and that's why when they saw AD Jonas, they said, "Hey, why aren't you at the lake? We'll give you a ride." And he refused.
And he was acting so weird too. I'm surprised that never stuck out in their mind after.
Yeah. He was just like, I don't know. Jonas is a weird kid. So it seems that BD Jonas is kind of clueless to how Martha feels. Like they she gives him the looks, she talks to him a lot, and Bartos actually shows interest in her a lot more than you would have thought. And Martha's just like, "Okay, I don't like you, whatever." So they're talking. BD Jonas and Martha are talking, and he remembers that he has to leave. He has to go see his grandmother, help her set up internet or whatever. So he goes. And AD Jonas was actually lurking about. So he comes up, he hides the scar on his neck with the coat, because she's actually seen the raincoat. And she asks him, like, "Oh, why are you carrying that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's supposed to rain later." And it does. There's a storm later. So she's like, "Okay, whatever." So he comes up with the same outfit and everything. And she's like, "Oh, I thought you were going to leave." And he's like, quiet, and then he says, "I thought I had more time." And it's strange because what he says is something that Adam would say. It's like, time has us, we don't have time, basically. So he says to Martha, "You and I are perfect for each other, never believe anything else." And they kiss. And I'm just like, why?
It's disgusting. Because it's like inception to like of the relationship for it to and I don't know why he did that. Yeah, it's like that's your aunt.
Yeah. I add that layer.
Yeah,
that was weird. I thought I questioned him. I was like, maybe he thought it wouldn't matter because he's going to stop everything from happening. Because he's stopping himself from being born, so it doesn't matter.
Mm.
God, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, I
can
didn't
see
think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
then
true.
that was one of my thoughts, but it's still like, dude, just you have a mission.
Right.
Get on
Stay
it.
focused.
So he leaves, and we travel to, he's like, oh, you're gonna be at the party later, which is the 25-year anniversary party. So later at the party, BD Jonas and Martha actually sleep together, and this is before Death Jonas.
Yeah.
She's looking at him like, yeah, finally got him. And and everybody's looking at them like, okay, ill.
Right.
So she's like, oh, they go up to her room, and before they actually sleep together, she's like, oh, I thought you're so right about what you said. And he's like, about my grandmother. And
that was
right.
funny.
What are you talking about? So she kisses him, and he's going with it. He's clueless, like he's so clueless.
He's like, I
to
got
what's
the
going
girl.
on, but he's just
I don't know why,
okay.
but I got her.
And that's why I was pissed at when I told you. I was like, Martha knew everything. I understand how people, like, some people would be upset with Bartosz for not, saying that
something.
what's going on with Jonas, but he didn't know any of that stuff was happening with Martha and Jonas. Martha knew what happened.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Martha knew she slept with Jonas. Martha couldn't wait. What? How many months was it? 4. I'm saying June.
6 months.
Thank you.
Yes.
No,
Was
it
it?
was like 6.
No, because he came back in November.
Actually, yeah, it was 3 months.
3 months. Okay. Oh, geez.
Like,
Because in June and then November.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Because it's like, okay.
Dag, she ain't wasting no time.
Okay, so that was like
Exactly.
more than 3 months. Sorry. So June.
So it's like, okay.
I don't know how to count 5. It's 5 months.
Time. His father just killed himself. You don't know who
Right.
found him.
Right.
These are teenagers.
You know?
They're
They-
millennials.
So she decides, I'm
they
gonna
think
go.
with their crotch.
yeah.
I'm gonna go.
It's like
She's selfish. Bitch is selfish. That's all it is.
Period.
period.
Period. Shoot. So, AD Jonas finally goes to Michael, and you can imagine he hugs him really hard because it's been about over a year.
Yeah,
actually
it's
seen
been
him.
that was a really emotional. Yeah,
So they hug, and Michael is
Reunion.
like, oh, he doesn't see that. He's like, he sees that he's different.
uh-huh.
He's like, but he doesn't know that it's not his Jonas that he saw this
Got
morning.
it.
Mhm.
So he's taking the hugs, and he's like, oh, my son loves me.
Mhm.
So then he goes ultimate fist bump, which is something that Michael always
Right.
said to him when he saw him. So Michael is freaking out, like, why would you say that to me? He's like, I know about the time travel. I know everything. So he says that he's there to stop him from killing himself. And Michael's confused because he wasn't actually planning on killing himself. So Michael actually figures out that he's like, maybe you aren't here to stop me. Maybe you're here to tell me what I should be doing, which is
Right.
killing myself.
Right.
So everything can happen.
Yeah.
So Jonas is not with it. But then older Claudia enters and says that Adam doesn't want to change things. He wants everything to happen the same way it always has.
Mhm.
So Adam
Right.
basically lied to him. She says that Adam is the darkness. I don't follow him, I follow the light. So she lets Jonas know, and this is AD Jonas, she lets AD Jonas know that he alone can stop all this from happening. That he basically has to fight himself, Adam, and the world without Jonas is not what he thinks it would be.
Got it.
So I'm questioning. I'm like, maybe Jonas is like sunning all these bitches. Everybody gonna disappear if he's not there.
Right,
You know?
right.
So I'm just like,
My thing is like he's like the glitch in the Matrix. Like he's there for a reason.
Right. Like
Mhm.
nobody's story will be able to be told if
Yeah.
he's not there.
It's like maybe they done this cycle a lot of times, and then they realize he was the missing ingredient. Yeah, the
Uh-huh.
missing link. Who knows?
that's why I feel like older Jonas is hiding something because he's aged. So it's like, what are you not saying?
Right.
So they leave him. AD Jonas and Claudia leave Michael, and Michael actually writes the letter. And I have the letter, and it's like really long, so I'm not gonna read it. But he writes the letter that is dated for them to open this to the minute that Mikkel
is missing.
Goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, he basically just says, I'm sorry I couldn't have told you all of this sooner. And it's just sad because, he has to leave his dad knowing what he's about to do.
Right.
So we go and we see Adam. Adam is standing there, and we see an older Magnus and an older Francisca. And Magnus is upset, and he's like, why didn't you just tell him, like, the reason for him going back? Like, why all the secrecy? And then Francisca is like, just, be quiet. Everything's supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen. Oh. Okay. Sorry, guys. So now we're on episode 7, The White Devil. Clausen has basically arrested Alexander. He tells him that he's looking for his brother, who is Alexander Collar. Clausen is not his original last name. That's his mother's last name. So he knows that Alexander, or Boris Newald, is lying about who he is, and he has arrested him. Charlotte tells Peter what happened, and the kids decide to tell the adults what they know. Mm-hmm. They're pissed because they find out basically the adults knew all along, and they just weren't saying anything. Hannah has decided that she's gonna go travel to 1954 and pretend to be Ulrich's wife, or looking for her husband.
Wow.
So she finesses Egon.
First level
That's thirst.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
That's like a definition of a thought.
She's like,
finesses Egon, and she gets a chance to speak to Ulrich. And poor thing is like chained up, straight jacket, everything.
Jeez.
And he's like, oh crap, like here, like you're here to help me or whatever. He's like, okay, have you seen Mikkel? How's my wife? How's my kids?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, if you had to choose now between me and Katerina, who would you choose? Did you ever love me? And he's like, yeah, I love you, bitch. Like,
right, let's go. Can you
like,
free me?
I love you. Like,
Yeah.
get me out of here.
Can you free
I
me?
freaking love you. And
I think
she's
he's
like,
finally saw the crazy in her eyes. Like,
she's batshit.
yeah, she's
Bat
crazy.
shit. She was giving him those crazy eyes. She was giving Katerina those crazy eyes at the party too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bitch, that's my man. Okay, psycho. Anyway, so that dirty woman leaves him there.
dirty woman.
She leaves him there. So she speaks to Egon, and basically we find out that she says she lost everything at home, and she's just looking to start over. Damn, that bitch is cold. So that's hints at a possible affair with Egon. Egon in 1954 sees Claudia, and they find her body, and they think that she was helping Ulrich with what happened with Helg.
Okay.
So, he goes to speak to Helg, and he mentions the White Devil. Right? That's the episode name, right?
Yeah. No. That's the episode name.
So, he mentions the White Devil. So we skip ahead to 1987, and Claudia is desperately trying to change things, to save her father, who is fated to die June 20th, 1987. June 26th, 1987, sorry. So it's the day of, so she goes with him, and he's supposed to die alone in his apartment. So she goes, and she's like, okay, we gotta get out of here, you're gonna come live with me. And he's just like, okay, whatever, bitch. But they go, he has chemo, and while he talks to her, and he lets her know that I think time travel is real. At this point, I think Back to the Future came out, so he references that. And she obviously knows it's real, but she's just like, oh, you're crazy, whatever. So he explains everything that happened with Ulrich and Mikkel, and he thinks that he made a mistake. And, they get back to the house, and she's just like, yo, pack your shit. Let's go. So she really wants to get out of the apartment. And he's going so slow, and he's just like, he's like, maybe it's the caves. Like, maybe we should search the caves. And she's just like, you know what?
It's like, now it's not the time to be a detective, Egon.
Right. Yeah. And so he
Jesus.
looks at her, and it clicks. And he's like, you knew about all of this.
Right.
It has to do with the cave, and it has to do with the power plant. You fucking knew.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just like, and he goes and he tries to call the police and let them know they have to search the cave. And she tells him, it's going to be a waste of time. Stop. And he calls her heartless. he says that she only cares about herself, and they struggle for the phone. So they're struggling back and forth for the phone, and he falls, hits his head, and he's bleeding out. So she's like, okay, she actually attempts to make the phone call, but then she stops and says that everything has to happen as it should be, and there will be sacrifices. So she goes home, like she says, I'm sorry, and Egon's last words are, "You are the white devil." So, yeah.
I know, your own father, too.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, and so she basically watches him die.
Right.
And she goes home, and she's like, Regina's not there, thank God, because she's covered in blood. And she's freaking out, and then the door opens, and it's A.D. Jonas. He walks in, and she's like, picks up a frying pan, like, who the fuck are you?
Right.
And he's just like, oh, you gave me the key. And she's like, I don't know you. And she realized that it was older Claudia that gave him the key. And he's like, yeah, we have to go. And don't worry, like, you'll be able to fix it next time. I know what you've done. You'll be able to fix it next time. Jesus. And she's like, where are we going? He's like, we're going to the future. End of episode.
Yep. I don't know if we should continue this now if we have time, or we're probably going to have to wrap this up for our next episode. Okay, no, we're gonna wrap this up.
There's just a lot.
Way too much?
Yeah, it's the season finale. There's a lot that's going on, and we really want to like dive into that, and then just speak upon some stuff for season 1 and 2 that we kind of glossed over, and how we feel about the characters and where they're going and where season 3 may go.
For sure, there's a lot of hidden signs and symbols, and I can't wait to get into that. Next episode.
That deserves its own episode in and of itself.
Episode 8 is like.
It's a lot.
What?
It's too much for the point. I just made note of like the big things that happen. Like I didn't like. Is this too much? Like
in all honesty, when I was rewatching the episodes, I was like, everything that happened in episode 8, I was like, that wasn't spread out. That was all in one episode. I was shocked.
You know who?
I didn't realize it was all
after
in one
like
episode.
Going over the notes and everything. You know who who really intrigues me, like the whole story behind this character, Clausen. Clausen is one of the most interesting characters in this whole thing, because I've been rewatching his episodes, and I don't know what it is, but I feel like his brother is a traveler. Yeah,
might be.
I'll get into that next episode.
Okay, sounds
They
good.
show a picture of his brother, and I just want to put it out there that we
thought it was Peter.
Peter,
because it actually did look like Peter. But
there's in 1987 just randomly, and supposedly he's a Doppler. But I'm like, who's sleeping with Helg?
I know.
1987.
Well, I'll say it quickly.
He's in the psych ward, isn't he?
No, but let me say this quickly. So Doppler, he comes from an extremely wealthy family, so he could have been easily like just married for money from a woman.
Okay.
Could have just married him for money. And then obviously they probably had a good divorce, and she moved, because the only reason Peter came back was because Helg was in that accident. So maybe he genuinely likes his dad. And
when I was rewatching, I was like, yeah, Peter is definitely a Doppler. Because I was like, he really looked like Helg, looking mad lost. So lost. I'm like, and then another thing I didn't mention, he actually blamed Charlotte for him cheating.
Typical man fashion.
He was like,
oh yeah,
sorry, let me not.
He came in, and he was like, I was at the office, and she's looking at him like super quiet, and he's looking at her, and he's like, oh, this is probably why it happened, because I don't get anything from you. It's like you're heartless.
What?
No, well, that logic.
To be honest, it didn't even shock me. Like, this.
I was like, men. I was like, oh, Peter, you are trash.
Yeah.
For some reason, that didn't even freaking shock me. Like, it's like, okay, that's what men fucking say.
Anyone who feels like they're being.
If anyone watches Little Big Lies, God, the men on that show, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
It's like I lost all faith.
Well, thank you guys for listening. Tune in next week as we wrap up season 2 of Dark and just postulate on where season 3 is going to go. This is Carolyn from Harlem.
Fancy Yams from the Bronx.
This is Jessica from Brooklyn.
And me and Jessica are going to come up with some tag names. You know, we definitely are. It has been a pleasure. See you guys next week.
All right. Bye.
Adios.